Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Reverend Alice. Thank you, everybody. It's good to be back. This is the first time I have been on this stage getting to speak to you since January. So praise God, it's good to be back. It feels so good to be in the room. I'm a little nervous this morning, which I'm never nervous when I'm here, but things are bubbling up. So here we go. Let's begin, as always, by taking a few deep breaths together. So if you will, exhale first and take a deep breath in. Let go. Take another deep breath and let go. Another deep breath in and let go. And so our theme for the month is Pulled by Vision, and our topic for today is Free Your Mind and the Rest Will Follow. And so I want to begin by saying, how many times have any of you ever in your life come up against a situation where you feel like, gee, I feel like I've been here before? Never? Maybe somebody? So we have these experiences in our life, right, where we continuously churn through our existence. We live in a particular story, each one of us, and it oftentimes seems like as we walk through our path, we keep oftentimes bumping up against similar circumstances, similar scenarios, kind of a similar storyline that keeps hovering around each one of us or us as a community. And, you know, spiritual evolution, personal growth is a spiral. Hopefully, it's an upward moving spiral, not just a spinning spiral or a drain that pulls us down into a whole other experience. But hopefully, our personal growth is an upward moving spiral. And that as we cycle around our story and as we come against similar circumstances, the measure of who we are and what change has taken place is how we respond, how we react, how we engage in that story as it shows up again. And I know in my life there are many stories that I have walked into over and over and over again. And yet, as I walk through my life, if I look back, I recognize that I've learned to show up a little bit differently. I've learned to recontextualize what's happening. And then over time, as certain things show up, when they show up, it's like, oh, this is that thing again, except maybe it's not. Maybe it's that same old story, but it looks very different. Perhaps it's that same old story, but it's evolved in a way that is actually bringing forth a new story. And it's how we look at it, it's how we contextualize it, and it's how we engage with it that opens up the possibility. And so this morning's conversation across Centers for Spiritual Living is free your mind and the rest will follow, under this context of being pulled by a vision. Now, if who we are and how we show up dictates how we interact with the story and how we contextualize that thing that's looping around once again, it then has to begin with us, with the individual who's looking at the experience, with the individual who's engaging in it. And I've been thinking a lot this week about this free your mind idea and the rest will follow. And in the last year or more, we've been talking a lot about societal issues, about oppression, about racism, about privilege, about a lot of things that are happening in our collective sphere that really need our attention, that really need our participation in order for those things to change. And I was thinking about this idea of freeing our mind, and realizing that, you know, in this philosophy, we remind ourselves regularly that whatever we're seeing out there is a reflection of something that's happening in here. And been contemplating this week this idea that in order for us to combat, say, oppression in the world, that we actually have to start with ourselves. And that each one of us potentially has an inner oppressor, who is the voice that we've taken on from the outside world and brought it into ourselves. And that inner oppressor is the one who's whispering in the back of our mind all these old stories, all these things that we've experienced, all this big societal stuff that's around us, and causing us to filter everyone else that's coming in. And, as a queer person, I know that throughout my life, I have lived with a lot of internalized homophobia, where I've taken on the heteronormativity of the world and the expectations of masculinity and turned those into a filter through which I edit myself as I walk through the world. And a couple weeks ago, I talked to you about how, as a queer person on the West Coast, I have experienced the liberation from much of that oppression. But I also want to point out that I have also taken on that oppression and have allowed an inner oppressor to live inside of me to edit who I am as I walk through the world. And we all have that voice in us somewhere. And it comes from our experience. It comes from our old story. It comes from every time we've cycled around that thing, the experience that we've had, and who has shown up and who's been part of that has given us a storyline in our mind that continues to repeat. And that inner oppressor is the one who is causing us to live small, to keep repeating the old story. In Judaism, there's no concept of a devil, but there is this idea of the Satan or Hasatan, which is the accuser, the one who points out your flaws, the one who points to you and says, this is what's wrong with you, this is your weakness, this is your old story, reminding you of all those feedback loops and all those histories and all those experiences and all that stuff that's floating around in the collective thoughtmosphere to tell you you're not enough. And if you think to the story of Jesus in the desert where he's being tempted by the devil, what if it was actually his better nature or that accuser saying, can you really do it? You've heard me say many, many times, anytime you choose to be something or do something, everything unlike it rises up in front of you to challenge you, to push you, to question you. It's not that accuser, it's not that voice is saying it's trying to push you down. It's not the enemy trying to control you. It's the universe rising up and say, are you strong enough? Will you do this in the face of this? Will you do this in the face of temptation? Will you do this in the face of oppression? Will you be this light in the face of darkness? And so we can use the voices in our mind and the stories and the history that we've experienced to give us context. And so we all have this voice inside of us that's pointing at all the littleness, that's pointing us back to how things were before, how they've been experienced. But if we contextualize that voice as actually being something that is there for us, then perhaps that voice could then be the one who reminds us of our history, but says, who will you be this time? Who will you be as you step into what's next? And if we can begin to take the voice of the oppressor within and turn it into the voice of liberation in ourselves, and each one of us begin to change the inner atmosphere within ourselves, we can begin to walk out in a new story, begin to project a new story, begin to expect a new story, and then we can begin to live in it and build it with each other. And we talk in Center for Spiritual Living Santa Cruz and in CSL nationwide and globally that we have this guiding vision that we call our global vision. And it's actually a long statement that ends with the line, we envision a world that works for everyone. And that's kind of the tagline. And a world that works for all is a really, really big story. And there's a lot of here we go agains floating around in all of our individual and collective experiences that seem to make a world that works for all something that's very far off. And I think that the purpose of spiritual community is to be a place where we can practice moving towards that ideal together. We have a community here. There's, 30 or 40 people in this room. We have an acre around this building. What would it look like for us as a community to be a people who say, we want to build a thriving community right where we are that sets an example of what a world that works for everyone could look like right here on this one little acre for these 30 people, and then begin to spread that idea out into the community around us. But if we try to reach for these great big global ideals, we can be very discouraged, and it can be really hard to see the path forward. But if we have a guiding vision that says, here's the great big idea, and we're all willing to reach for it, but at the same time look right where we are, at the stories and the experiences that are cycling around us, and invite ourselves to engage them in a new way that will move us towards that vision, starting from within each one of us, and then working into our relationships with each other, and how we operate as a community, and how we hold the stewardship of our land, and how we engage with the community around us. And then we can create a ripple effect that moves out with each one of us as the center, and this place as our center of gravity, as our place of example, as a place that we come to engage with each other and be in the cultivation of that vision that will continuously drive us forward and be our guiding compass for each one of us to choose where our individual piece is to participate in this greater puzzle, knowing that if we all come together, we have the big picture already. It's just a matter of connecting the dots and bringing forth a new way of thinking that allows us to see the overlap and where the opening can be. And so as we move out into the world today, as we unfold into all the shifts and the changes that are taking place here in this spiritual community, with Alice's transition, with the potential future that's right in front of us together, that we can begin right here, in this moment, with this community who might appear to be repeating a cycle, who might appear to be in the circumstance that's happened before, where one more minister is moving on from this place. And yet, for the first time ever, a member of this community is available and ready and knows what the potential vision is that lives here, and it lives in me, and it lives in us. What if this is a different story, even though it might look like the story that's happened before? But if we use this opportunity as a community to see what it looks like to walk through an old story in a new way, then we can together begin to replicate that experience into our own lives and into how we shape what this community is moving forward, realizing that we are about transformation, we are about shift in context, we are about new story, we are about solution, we are about possibility. And so let us look to this turning as the birth of something new that none of us have ever seen before, that is actually calling us towards the vision that's been calling us all along. We can now start to look for it and see it and build it together. And so if you will, take a deep breath in and let go. Take another deep breath. Let go. One more collective breath. Breathe in. And as we breathe together, let us each move and feel the rhythm and the flow of our own breath. And then let us together remember, contemplate, realize that there is a greater presence, something beyond each one of us that is breathing each of us. That indeed each one of us is the universe alive, that which we are made of is infinite. That there is one life that is not only breathing each one of us, that it is breathing the trees, it is shining the sun, it is growing the grass, it is spinning the planet, it is driving all of evolution. That there is one infinite creative intelligence that is bubbling, buzzing, and popping forth throughout all of existence, and it is channeling itself into the world through each one of us. That the allness of the field of possibility funnels itself through each one of our intention, our attention, our choice, our participation in life, the way that we interact, the choices we make, everything that we do is spirit funneling itself into existence. And so let us be a people who are continuously choosing to be on purpose, to be a place where the Spirit of the living God is manifesting here on earth, revealing possibility as our very perception. Let us be a people who look to a high ideal and a great vision and allow it to draw us forward step by step, to build a living, thriving example of what a world that works looks like right here. And so in this moment, I just speak a word of gratitude for possibility, for change, for knowing that evolution itself supports those who are most adaptable to change. And so let us be the change. Let us be the place where something new takes place. And let us remember always that there is indeed a power for good in this universe that is greater than we are. And if we so choose, each one of us can be a place where that presence works itself in the world. Let each one of us be a place where God shows up, where life shows up, where love shows up, where truth shows up. Let each one of us be a place where something more is revealed. And so in this moment, I just speak a word of invitation to each one of us to just take another deep breath and realize that as easily as we are breathed by the something greater than we are, we can surrender to the flow of life and know that we are all being carried towards a collective vision, and that if we allow ourselves, we will arrive there together. And so for all of this and so much more, I just say yes, and so it is. Thank you, my friends. It's good to be back. I love you.